All right, everybody, welcome back to the Combatcast. We are live after some technical difficulties. And, we're cooking, baby. Chevy, tell me what we got coming up.
All right, January 21st, we're back to UFC pay-per-views. Thank goodness. We'll be previewing UFC 283 Teixeira versus Hill from Brazil. And January 28th, there's no fights again, so we're going to be working on a show for you guys. And then February 5th, your boy's birthday, UFC Fight Night, the Black Beast, Derek Lewis versus Spivak. That fight has been rescheduled. Hopefully it goes through. Derek Lewis has been looking quite trim and ready to go. So
yeah, that's interesting. Derek Lewis. I know we're going to get to news later, and we'll talk about this fight, but like Derek Lewis in shape. Do you think this is a serious Derek Lewis who, really Derek got all his wins. We always talked about it. He always looked like he was pretty much losing any important fight, but he comes out and he catches him. He was slick from times. He would play that like he was hurt and then try to knock him out, and he was good about saving his energy. But is this maybe Derek Lewis like taking his career seriously and seeing what he can do?
At a bit of a crossroads at this point. He's lost a few now. If he really does want to be serious about trying to be champion, which, he obviously has the power to do that, some cardio to his game is really all he needs. He has the takedown defense, definitely has the power. So He has that cardio in. It might even help him be a little bit more of a dynamic striker. He likes to throw the spinning kicks and all that occasionally. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to see a slim down Derek Lewis in the octagon. Let's see what we get. Yeah. Derek healthy. I love
it. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's get into this card. Yeah, finally, back to some MMA fights. We're going to get into this card. We had a changing of the main event. Kelvin Gastelum had a mouth injury, possibly some staph on his face or whatever. Had a tooth knocked out in training, so he can't fight. Sean Strickland stepped in to fight Nassourdine Imavov on short notice. Strickland, if you remember, was the main event fighter of the last pay-per-view of 2022, and now he's the main event fighter of the first, not pay-per-view, but fight card, the first fight card of 2023. So hopefully we get a better fight than we did last time.
Yeah, he's the new Cowboy Cerrone, maybe, of this era.
Not as likable, but yeah.
No, for sure.
All right. So with that being said, not a super deep fight card. We're just going to go through the main event. There's a lot of UFC or MMA news to get to, so we're just going to go through the main event. We'll start off with Umar Nurmagomedov versus Raoni Barcelos.
Yes. Umar Nurmagomedov is 15-0, only 1 KO, 7 subs, 7 decisions. You can already tell, what his name and everything. This guy's a wrestler. Barcelos 17-3, 8 KOs, 2 subs, 7 decisions. So this guy is capable of going to decision, but he's probably a little bit more of a puncher. That being said, maybe they want, this 15-0 kid. They probably want him in there with some guys that can punch. But obviously, I don't think this guy's too dangerous of an opponent. I got to go with Nurmagomedov. I say probably going to ragdoll him. And I'll say he gets it done in round 1. Actually, no. Yeah. He'll submit in round 1. Yeah.
Round 1? All right. Well, classic striker versus grappler. Umar's obviously been dominant, and Barcelos is now 35 years old. So I think Nurmagomedov just continues his winning streak, stays undefeated. But I think this is going to be a decision win. I think Barcelos is tough enough and skilled enough on the ground to avoid being tapped out. So I think Umar gets a decision win. All right, move on. Next fight. I'm excited for this one. Ketlyn Vieira versus Raquel Pennington.
Let's talk about it. Ketlyn Vieira is 18-2. She's 2-0, 4 subs, 7 decisions. She's coming off of wins over Holly Holm and Miesha Tate. All right, so she's coming off some named opponents. Raquel Pennington, Her last two victories were over Macy Chazon and Aspen Ladd. Now, not as named as the other two, but names we recognize. Mm-hmm. So 14-8. Don't let that record fool you. She's been fighting tough competition since her career started. Yeah. Former Ultimate Fighter. She was on there. 1 KO, 4 subs, 9 decisions. But she's on a 4-fight win streak. She's very capable. She's very tough. But I think Vieira right now is starting to really cook. I like her. I think it's going to be a battle. I don't think Pennington is the kind of girl who's going to get finished. I don't think we're seeing a finish in this fight, but I like Vieira by decision.
Yeah, Ketlyn is a big physical fighter, but I think Raquel's toughness is unmatched in this division for sure. She is super tough. So I think she can weather some of the early grappling from Ketlyn and then wear her down with volume. And so I think I agree with you. No finish in this fight, but I'm going to go with Raquel, probably an underdog. I didn't look at the betting odds, but I'm going to go with Raquel via decision.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, should be a good fight. I think they're evenly matched. Like I said, the records are a little deceptive, but Raquel Pennington is always game.
All right, she's just a dog for sure.
Yeah.
All right, possible fight of the night contender here, Punahele Soriano versus Roman Kopylov.
Soriano is 9-2, 6 KOs, 2 subs, 1 decisions. He's lost his last 2 fights, or no, 2 of his last 3 fights, but those were by decision, and I'd have to look it up, but like real quality opponents. Roman, he's 9-2, 8 KOs, 1 decision. He's also lost 2 of his last 3, but he's won his last fight. So both guys are finally back in the win column, and I think because of that too, they're going to let it hang loose a little bit here, right? I think okay, we don't have to fight safe. We both won. We got upset. This is going to be a nice chance for someone to go on a 2-fight win streak. It's true. I think I'm going to go with Roman here, but it's really tough. I'll go with Roman by decision.
Yeah, like I said, possible fight of the night contender. Both guys are brawlers that look to go toe-to-toe with their opponent every time. I would say Roman is the better striker technically, but Punahele's chin is so fantastic that I'm having a hard time picking. So I think I see Punahele like getting stunned, and then he catches Roman coming in for the finish. So I'm going to go with Punahele via KO round 3.
Okay.
I predict this is going to be a very exciting fight, though. I'm hoping.
I think you're right.
We'll go from one exciting fight to another exciting fight because Dan Ige does not have boring fights. So Dan Ige versus Damon Jackson.
I was just looking this up now. Some extra stuff here. So Damon Jackson, he is 22, 4-1. This guy's been around. He's got a 4-fight win streak going now. He's got 4 KOs, 15 subs, 3 decisions. His last fight was the performance of the night, TKO. Dan Ige, 15-6, 4 KOs, 5 subs, 6 decision. He's on a 3-fight losing streak right now, though. But yeah, let's look at that real quick. That's the one I want to take a look at. Dan Ige.
He's lost 4 of his last 5, actually. So
yes. But like looking at some of that, like Korean Zombie, Josh Emmett, like these are all like quality fighters right now,
and very close decisions as well.
Yes,
yeah, he was not decisions, very close.
Yeah, I think Ige is going to bounce back and get it done here. Actually, although I wouldn't be surprised either way, but I think Ige back against the wall. He needs this.
I hope you're right. But I think this is another tough matchup for Dan. Jackson is a finisher on the ground for sure. So Dan obviously going to want to keep this standing. He has good takedown defense. So it is possible that he can sprawl and brawl. And if he does successfully do that, I can see him getting a KO. But I think it's just more likely that Jackson eventually gets him down and subs him, takes his back and subs him. So I'm going to say Jackson rear naked choke in round 2.
All right. And Randy, we'll get to that after we finish up. We're going to talk some news here. Is the Dana White stuff overshadowing the card? We'll get to that.
Question. It's a good question. Yeah. All right. We'll move on to the main event, though, of this card. Sean Strickland versus Nassourdine Imavov.
Imavov is 12-3, 5 KOs, 4 subs, 3 decisions. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He's got a TKO over Ian Heinisch, another TKO over Shabazian, and he just had a decision over Joaquin Buckley. Okay, quality wins back to back. 2 of those 3 were finishes. All right, Sean Strickland, 25-9, 10 KOs, 4 subs, 11 decisions. He's lost his last 2 fights, but that's to Alex Pereira.
I don't think he's 25-9. I think he's 25 and
5.
So yeah, he does not have 9 losses.
Yeah, my eyes are getting blurry. Sorry, we might have to adjust this as time goes on. But rather than come up with the grips of my humanity, let's talk about. We'll continue on. Sean Strickland is, like I said, he had 2 fights that he just recently lost to. Alex Pereira, which he had a horrible game plan in.
Right.
But more importantly, Jared Cannonier. The reason why that's so important is because as the octagon, when he steps in there, that fight was only a month ago, and it was a 5-round decision. So you're coming off a 5-round fight. That's not a whole lot of time in between. I don't think he got injured. So
not a whole lot happened in that fight.
Right.
And Sean fights, like, his training is just fighting like every other day, I'm pretty sure. So if anyone can do it, it's going to be him.
Does this affect him, though?
Oh, I'm sure it affects him for sure. But
yeah,
I don't think that's going to be the most contributing factor in this fight.
All right, so who do you have? I'll let you pick first this time.
I think this is a terrible matchup for Sean. I think Imavov is a dark horse in this division. He's much better technically standing up. And I think the most important difference is distance management. Imavov's distance management is so good, and I think that's going to nullify Sean's most important part of his striking, which is his pressure. So Imavov's going to be able to keep him at distance a little bit and pick away at him, snipe him. And if Sean does manage to get close to him, Imavov can grapple, so he can take him down, make him think about those, threaten the takedowns, which will make him a little bit more hesitant, allows Imavov to land more shots on the feet. So I think he is going to get it done standing, Imavov, that is, and I'll say it's a round 3 TKO.
Wow.
I think this is a very bad matchup for Sean. So we'll see that.
All right. Well, I'm going to lean into you a little bit on this one. I will, just to be a little different, though, I'll say he gets it done. I'll go round 4. Round 4 TKO.
Mm-hmm. For Imavov?
For Imavov, yeah. I don't really like this fight for Strickland either. I'm a little more concerned about, like you said, not a lot happened in that fight, but like those is training camps. There's still something special about. But Strickland is a different animal. I don't know if this mentally affects him the same way. So
right. He is a special breed, one of one for sure.
Yeah.
I am bummed. Speaking of Imavov's technical skills, I am very bummed that we don't get to see this Kelvin Gastelum versus Imavov fight, because technically it would be an excellent boxing match basically between them, because Bumblebee's footwork, we call him Bumblebee. I don't believe that's his actual nickname, but
no.
Kelvin's footwork is, absolutely fantastic. So if anyone was going to nullify that distance management and be able to get inside, it would be Kelvin. So yeah. I do hope that we get that fight somewhere down the line. Hopefully we get many more Kelvin fights, because I feel like we haven't seen him in a while. So hopefully he gets well soon.
I hope so. Do you want to start off with this Dana White story, or how do you want to tackle the news?
Sure, yeah. We'll just get into it.
A little bit before on our last episode, yeah. But
it's been a terrible, terrible start to 2023. We haven't had any fights yet, and it's just been awful. Obviously, we'll start off with the worst for some, arguably the worst. This Dana White for the sport. I think Dana White
Mm-hmm.
domestic violence issue. So
I would say it's overshadowing this card, Randy, too, to answer your question. But I think it's not hard to really overshadow this card.
Weak card, yeah.
Card. So
do you think Dana's going to be at the fights this week?
I wouldn't. I think I'd take off a little time here. Maybe come back at the pay-per-view. Is the pay-per-view in Brazil?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe go down there. We'll see. Maybe you don't want to go down there too. Who knows? But
I don't know if you want to be in Brazil right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But I think what's fascinating too is like his slap fight league and is about to start up, and we thought, no way, that's fucking happening. But no, it just got delayed. It's crazy.
It's like next week now instead, right?
Yeah. I just took a week off. We're not addressing it, and
no, there's been shockingly very little backlash. Like I said, he came out and did the right things, immediately acknowledged, what happened and apologized. But I am shocked that
nothing,
Endeavor or ESPN or Disney or whoever, nothing to say about it,
Right. Because it's not like it's one of the fighters, which is bad enough, but it's the face of the company.
Right. I don't hear a lot of people calling for Dana's job or anything like that. I know there are a few groups that are, but
I think people just want it just like addressed. I think that's what people would like. Just to have it addressed and have something happen,
Right. If this was any other major sports league and the commissioner or whatever of the NFL or MLB or the NBA was filmed slapping their wife, it would be everywhere. So it's interesting. I hope that something happens because obviously you can't just get away with that and apologize. That's not enough. So
we'll see what happens. But
we'll move on from
more sad stories.
It's just going to be a whole list of bad news, guys. So bear with us. So definitely the worst news. Victoria Lee, 18-year-old sibling to Angela Lee, rising young star in MMA, passed away unexpectedly on the 26th of December. So no cause of death as of right now. Obviously, everyone's respecting the wishes of the family, but just terrible news.
Yeah, 18 years old. That just sucks. That's awful. Not a lot to say. Not a lot to say about this. We don't really know the circumstances. So just sad to see, and condolences to that family. Hopefully, they can bounce back. I mean, as good as you can from something like this. I don't even know how you do that, but
luckily it does seem like the MMA community is rallying around the family. So support them the best way that they can. So, like you said, condolences to the family for sure. Very sad story. Move on to some possible corruption. Speaking of Brazil, Aldo's family has been accused of receiving COVID relief money for underprivileged people in Brazil. Now, I did read it was like a total of like $800, which is nothing probably for Aldo. So I wonder if this is some sort of clerical error or something. But obviously, of all the people in Brazil that need money, Aldo is not one of them. So
no, very strange. Very strange. It was only heard. That's interesting. I kind of wonder too if that just sounds like some kind of like mistake somewhere, But then his wife had a comment about nosy leftists. So maybe his wife was involved in something, and he's just,
So I'm not very well versed on exactly what's happening, but I know that I believe they ousted their president, who is a far right, political figure. And Aldo's family was housing him. They're housing him, and he had to flee to the U.S. And they're housing him in a property that Aldo's company owns. So that makes sense with the far left comment. So we're not super well versed on it, and we don't know everything, so we don't want to comment too much. But from what we've read, a little bit icky.
Yeah, it does not sound like a great story.
Yeah.
We'll wait till we find out. I hope Aldo is somehow not really involved in this, but anyway,
add that in with the disappointment from the James Krause ongoing saga. We're big fans of James Krause.
Mm-hmm.
He potentially did something very gross. Now Aldo potentially doing something gross. So hopefully we can get this sorted out and continue on 2023 a little bit better. But more bad news. So let's just keep going. Khabib retires from MMA coaching. Arguably one of the best coaches in MMA currently decides to retire. Obviously, a man of his word when it came to retiring from fighting. Do you think this retirement's going to stick?
So far, everything this man does seems to hold true. So I have no reason to doubt him. He doesn't need the money. And he doesn't seem like he needs the fame. He doesn't seem like one of those guys. So.
Do you think that this Dana White issue has anything to do with him retiring? Because obviously, I don't see Khabib as a person that would tolerate something like that.
I don't know. I don't know about that. That's hard to say. Khabib is a different animal altogether. He's been in MMA gyms. I'm not trying to put, I'm sure he's, like we're not talking about the elite fighter. The people like I'm sure Khabib has been around some unsavory people before too. So I don't know if this would necessarily be the thing that turns him off. But
good point.
Yeah, but no, I don't think this has anything to do with it. But I do think I do trust Khabib. I think he's a man of his word. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. He didn't say this was a promise to his mom or anything, but I mean, if he's just not into it, then that's it. I think he's done.
All right, we'll move on to the next piece of news. Bellator has been put up for sale.
Huh.
Do you think UFC has any interest in buying him, even though they owe $4 billion right now, I believe, or something like that, Endeavor from purchasing the UFC or WME?
Well, no, that's interesting. Like they would be the ones you would think that would buy it.
One championship might have something to say too, because although we don't see very much of them, they own a giant share of the market, almost all of Asia, which is billions and billions of people. So they're making tons of money.
I would say if they were pulling in views and ranking and ratings, Showtime would be a prime position just to buy them. But I don't know how much they do for Showtime.
Well, I actually think I don't have this off the top of my head, but I think Bellator's next fight card is actually on Paramount Plus, which.
Oh, right.
So I don't know if the deal with Showtime ended. I know they might be under the same company because I believe they have some sort of collaboration between Showtime and Paramount. Maybe they're just trying to gauge interest or make it more accessible to fans. But
go ahead.
I don't see PFL being able to buy Bellator because they're still building their brand after their rebranding from World Series. So I really think One Championship's the only people that are going to be able to afford that. Randy Oscar says it's going to be on CBS. Yeah, that's who owns Paramount.
Right. Yeah. So, but I don't know. I would say a bigger question I would think too, if someone does buy Bellator, what can Bellator do to be more successful and visible? Like they need something different that really draws attention. I think it was Hawani I heard recently talking about this too. Like if you compare to like the old Strikeforce day, Strikeforce had women's fighting before the UFC did, right? So it was something different. Mm-hmm. And, they had like a mix of some of these older fighters with name value still. Bellator has a little bit of that, but they don't have anything that really stands out. And I would go so far to say is the oversaturation of UFC and MMA in general probably hurts them as well. So you really need to be unique in what you're putting out there right now. I don't know what that would be.
They need other combat sports like One Championship does, where they do boxing or MMA fights at some of these events, because right now, like you said, they're just UFC light. They're like Randy Oscar saying in the comments right now. He stopped watching Bellator when they went to Showtime. They're more difficult to watch than UFC, who's on ESPN Plus.
Right.
And, they arguably have a worse product. They don't have the name value. They get all the older fighters from the UFC. While they have killers, they don't have the name value. So they need something like One Championship has, where they do Muay Thai. There's no, other than like,
we did
lion fight or whatever. There's nobody doing like Muay Thai in the US, or some sort of jiu-jitsu. Maybe bring in Eddie Bravo's combat jiu-jitsu or something like that to do.
We didn't. I don't think we had this in the news segment, but this might be. I was going to say, PFL just signed Jake Paul.
That's next on the list.
Yeah. Okay, good. So now Jake Paul, having a name like that, could mean something for a Bellator. You know what I mean? So like having that, I'm not saying that's enough, but combine what you just said, having these different style fights, maybe doing some of the cross promotional stuff they've done. I would say right now, work out a deal with PFL. PFL can put some fights on besides their tournaments, have some cross promotion, and maybe share a Jake Paul or something like that. But then again, I don't, like you said, PFL probably can't afford Bellator. So they need something. They need something to draw people in, and then they have to be different when they get there.
Right. I agree. I just don't see who's going to buy it. So
right. And that's a great idea for PFL. If Jake Paul's coming over there, maybe they should do something different. Maybe have, a Muay Thai fight, combat jiu-jitsu. Maybe put a couple different things on a card and spice it up,
Yeah.
So now let's get to that. Let's get to Jake Paul then. So Jake Paul, PFL. I'll tell you my thoughts since I'm already talking here, and you can tell me what you think. Great move for PFL. Absolutely great move. I'm skeptical if we still see him in MMA. I'm not saying he won't do it. I'm actually hopeful. I actually want to see him do MMA. I'm curious. And I'm expecting that they're going to put him in there with people that he should be able to defeat initially, especially in the first couple fights. But we're going to really see what he's about then, too, because as we've seen with some crossover, people like Jake Hager, even, who had wrestling credentials, that they could do well with certain amateur competition, but even then, a certain step up, you'd see they weren't necessarily killing it. Now, Jake has a athletic background. He's been doing this with boxing and doing it well and putting the work in. I'm very curious to see how he does. I'm curious to see how he's booked. And I will say there is a little bit of doubt this still happens. I don't know. We'll see. But I'd love to see. But he did say, so speaking of comments, Randy Oscar here, is he going to fight Nate Diaz? He did say he wanted to box Nate and he'd fight it in an MMA fight. PFL, you want to get some people looking your way, you get Nate Diaz, Jake Paul in an MMA fight, $1 million purse.
I think that's the move.
Yeah.
I think they box first.
Yeah.
Jake probably wins that.
Right.
And then they go and, Jake hopefully puts on a good showing in an MMA fight. I don't see him beating Nate in an MMA fight.
No.
But, anything can happen.
That's probably the move. He probably won't even do like one or two. It's probably to get the Diaz fight so they have a promotion to book it, and they know he can't get the UFC to book him.
Yep.
PFL could use publicity. That's probably the move. We'll see what happens.
I don't see him fighting any like PFL fighters. Like you might see some sort of, him versus, I don't know, some YouTuber or something like that in a PFL fight, special pay-per-view or something like that. But I don't think he's going to be fighting some Joe Schmo 2-0, pro
I think Jake,
MMA fighter.
I think Jake is all about being a special attraction. I think the boxing MMA fights is limited. It's coming towards an end. And he knows he might not get that world-class boxer to fight him with a name. Because that's what you probably ultimately want. You probably want to make it in boxing. He knows maybe he'll lose that fight, but hey, we get there, right? When you get the money. That's not going to happen. Well, the last real money fight in MMA you could have boxing would be Nate Diaz. Well, how do we make that appealing, right? Well, maybe we say MMA, but he actually goes out and does MMA. He beats him first in boxing because if Nate Diaz beats him in boxing for some reason, we're probably not going to get the MMA fight.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's dead in the water. But if he beats Nate in boxing, the casual fans are going to go, oh, okay. Could he beat Nate in MMA? There'll be a little bit of doubt. And then that would be a quick wheel race probably. But,
I'm super intrigued. This is the first person who's come in that's put their money where their mouth is and actually going to take a real fight, because boxing is a sport. MMA is as close to a real fight as we're going to get. So props to Jake. If he actually fights an MMA fight, I will be a legit fan of the guy. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I would say I almost wish it wasn't going to be this way. I think we might have figured out the formula, but if it doesn't happen, I hope he does take a couple tomato cans and fights them and builds his way up in MMA. But I think he's going to do this. I think you're going to see Jake in WWE at some point too with Logan, not necessarily full time, but a special attraction. Maybe even at a WrestleMania this year, like something. I expect we'll see the Paul brothers together, and it's just going to be to create attention, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's an interesting theory we got going here, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. So we're gonna move on. Another disappointing and sad news article. Phil Baroni, former Pride fighter, former UFC fighter, murdered his girlfriend allegedly in Mexico.
Yeah, the story's crazy. I know some of the details. Was he called the police, but it was basically very sketchy. His story that I don't even remember all the details, but they were wrestling.
He said that he pushed her down.
Yeah,
she said she cheated on him or something. He said he pushed her down and she hit her head in the tub, but that did not match with her injuries. She was beaten all over her body, and his hands were all busted up. It is terrible. I hope he gets fucked up in that Mexican prison. Real bad.
I went to Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, the first Josh Barnett, and Phil Baroni was on that. Forget who they had him in there with, but I remember Phil kind of running around. He was sticking around the crowd. He was kind of all over the place. Oh, that's interesting. And Josh Barnett recently commented on, his last interaction with Phil Baroni being at that event. And he said the same thing. And he said that he was all over the place, and he's blaming, he says, CTE. He says, not justifying it, but this is a real problem. And if you remember, Phil Baroni, there was an Instagram post where he was playing with a gun or something one time that he got deleted. And so, I mean, it's interesting because Stephan Bonnar was having the same problems. And, now Stephan Bonnar's passed away. Phil Baroni looks like he might have allegedly murdered somebody. And it's just a sad state. And maybe we do need to check out what's going on with some of these fighters in CTE.
Yeah. Grim prediction. But main event fighter Sean Strickland, probably not that far down the road, might be one of these guys too. So yeah, I hope the UFC can figure out some scientific way of determining these things and helping these guys out before it gets to this kind of situation. Obviously we can't have people doing these things. So hopefully we figure it out. All right, we have one piece of MMA related news that is not depressing, so we saved that for last. Go ahead, Dave. Take it away.
Rafael Fiziev has said that he was promised a fight with Justin Gaethje in March. He said Dana wants it. He wants it. He says we're waiting on a contract. Everybody wants it. He said he'd be surprised if it's not March and anything else happens. That should be a banger of a fight.
Yeah, who do you think pulls that one out if that fight gets made? Off the top of your head.
Gaethje.
Yeah, I would probably go with Gaethje too.
I think Gaethje's still one of the best in the world. He's just not Oliveira or Khabib, but he's right there with Poirier, Islam Makhachev. I mean, Islam Makhachev, we're going to see as time goes on. He was very impressive against Oliveira, but I also kind of looking back at that, I feel like we didn't know what a stylistically good matchup Islam Makhachev ended up being in that fight. Like, right. He really was better on the ground, and like he held his own with the striking. But that also makes you a really good fighter because you can do that with Charles Oliveira. So I don't know.
So, yeah. All right, that's our show for our beginning for 2023. Hopefully, it's all up from here.
Yes,
but I'm excited to have fights back.
Yeah, we should have an interview coming up for the live YouTube audience out there around 7:00. We are scheduled to have Mateo Gonzalez unless something comes up. Yeah, friend of the show. If something does come up, no worry. We still got love for Mateo. Yeah. But that is the plan. So we're going to sign off. And for everybody watching live and wants to tune in, we'll see you in about 15 minutes or so. All right, thanks for coming, guys.